Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Tuesday night community connections. It's so good to have you here. If you're in the room, especially, and if you're watching the recording, thank you for being with us. Tuesday nights is where we get together as the My Self Reliance community to connect, to meet each other, to learn different ways that we can become self reliant. I'm Kelli Wilkins, your host, and thank you for coming if it's your first time. We have the beautiful Professor Robyn Cosford in the room tonight, and we welcome you, a special guest.
Great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, we're going to jump in. I'm going to add you there. Tonight, we just met a few weeks ago, and I got to hear you speak. And so I was so excited to meet you because I think everybody needs to hear truth around health and dispel some of the myths that we have going on. Lots of myths around health. It's kind of the thing that there's a new flavor of health every couple of years, and so it's really great to have yourself on. We're going to dispel some of those. We're going to get to some truths that and also how we got here. This is a very interesting space in time that we're in, and especially after the events of the last week, those that were in the chat room, just talking about the passing of dear Charlie Kirk in this last week. I didn't know actually who he was before last Thursday when I heard about it, and I feel like now we're shifting. Times are shifting, and people can come out and be free to speak and speak truth and speak what's on your heart. And there's lots more people ready to unite and to do that. So, um, it's been a big week, but we thank you for being here, Robyn.
It's just wonderful. It's as I've been doing this since I surrendered my license in January of 22, and since then I've been doing a lot more of the speaking into groups and wherever I get the opportunity, because it is a time where things need to be spoken openly. It really does need to be done. We have a window of time, and if we don't take that stand, if we don't speak openly, then those very same powers that were behind what happened for Charlie Kirk will actually continue to grow in strength and power, and things will not be what we want them to be. So it is, as you say, Kelli, incredible times, to be in. And we do have to, if we don't stand in truth, and who is it who said it? You probably know, but there is an oft-quoted saying now that evil prospers when good men do nothing. So, and that's the whole point, that if and we saw this in the last election, by the way, only 6 million of your massive 18 million eligible voters actually voted.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
Because there was part of it was that there was an awful lot of talk through the, let's say, awake community. We're going to do a conscientious no vote. We're not going to vote because we can't. Just think what would have happened if they had actually stood up. If they had actually stood up, we would not have the government. We would have a US, we'd be running it like the US are now.
Yes.
Their people stood up. Ours did not.
Yeah, I believe that 100% too, because we had a conversation in this very room and I polled the community and I said, we had 76 people on, and 56 said that they were not going to vote.
Exactly.
And that the very people who know how to vote
That's right.
will abstain. And so that's why, when we take that courage and make a good choice, make our feelings known in the right way, we can be a force for good.
We absolutely can. The bottom line is there still is more of us than there is of the evil forces, let's say. There still is. But if we don't take a stand, if we don't stand up for truth, if we don't act on that truth, then we're nothing. We're
Mm.
sitting on the fence. We're nothing. Yeah.
That's right. And it's I love the scripture, the salt that loses its savor is good for nothing, trampled under the feet of men. So, this is the time that we have. And if we can take anything away from what we've learned in the last week, it's that courage to speak out and to not be afraid. I don't know if people are watching, saw the email that I put out this week, but I really feel like, as sad as it is to lose a good man, something good will come of it, and this is our time. So, so getting to truth and getting to the truth of health. Robyn, just share with us a little bit for those who haven't met you and don't know your story. Take us back to what happened.
Yeah, sure. I've been a functional medicine practitioner for some 35 years. I was trained in naturopathy, so herbs, nutrition, homeopathy before I completed my medicine, got an honours degree in medicine with a HD in biochemistry. So that was really what tied the nutrition in for me. I literally wrote out my own biochemical flow charts to see exactly where magnesium, zinc, B6, where all these things fit. So for me, that was just really solid. So went into started specialty training, but then had the second three of my 5 kids. I've got 5 children, so that put an end to that one. So headed down into the functional medicine path. So I've been doing that for 35 years. So one of the few doctors in Australia who's actually fully trained as naturopath as well as medicine. I was a senior lecturer for ACNM, the Australasian College of Nutritional and Environmental Medicine, which basically meant I trained other doctors. I'd been a research into, nutritional environmental medicine. I've been a researcher with the University of Newcastle in the 1990s into chronic fatigue syndrome, autism, ADHD, looking particularly at the gut profiles, but also fatty acids and urinary metabolic profiles. So we were one of the leaders in the world in looking at gut microbiology at that time. In fact, we were pretty much the first in the world. And we were world leaders in the whole thing of chronic fatigue syndrome. So that was back mid-1990s. So like fast forward, I was pretty much a lot of work with autism and children's with neurodevelopmental disorders. As a mother of 5 kids, is something I'm very passionate about. So a lot of work there. I ran 2 International Mind of a Child conferences, 1998 and 2002, again, the first in Australia, spoke at several international autism conferences. And so that was sort of the background of what I was doing. And then COVID came. No, well, prior to that, actually, the system has been going for functional medicine doctors for years. It didn't just start with COVID. The attack of the system on doctors didn't just start with COVID. So I'd been numbers of good colleagues of mine I've watched get picked off over the years on the way through. So I'd been targeted. 3 occasions they came for me to try and find something that they could get me with. Never been the subject of one single patient complaint, but there have been a number of other doctors who have made complaints because they didn't like what I was doing. So on the 3rd occasion, the system literally physically took 30 patient files to pour over to try and find something. And you'd say, well, in fact, I did say, because my patients hadn't given, in fact, my patients did not give permission. They didn't ask the patient's permission. They went beyond that and they said, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant whether the patients give permission or not. We aren't taking those files. So they took the files, put over them to try and find something to nail me with. They couldn't find anything, but they said, you have to now fully computerize everything so the next time we can get it with the press of a button, their control. And we're coming back in 12 months' time. So in that 12 months' time, COVID happened. I was one of the doctors writing ivermectin scripts, mask exemptions, vaccine exemptions, wherever I saw there was an appropriate indication I could use. So I knew my goose would be cooked. No questions asked. I would be done. Most people, I think, know that in March of 21, all health practitioners were sent out a letter that stated that we were to comply with the health directives, and beyond complying, we actually had to be seen to promoting them. So, and any doctor who wasn't, any practitioner, this wasn't just sent to doctors, it was sent to all health practitioners, but doctors were the first ones they targeted. And anyone who was in breach of that would be investigated and likely deregistered. And that actually exactly is what has happened. There are numbers of my colleagues who are still fighting in the legal system even today. Many who've not just lost their profession and lost their practices, but some have even lost their homes. There are some who are living off just whatever support they can get. It's criminal. It's absolutely criminal what's happened to the doctors. So I was able to avoid that because I saw it coming. I'd had enough run-ins with the system that I knew what the system did. And so I chose to retire my license ahead of when they were going to take it from me. The Lord started speaking to me in the October and saying, you're going to have to surrender your license. So I had a couple of months lead in to kind of wrap my head around that idea, and surrendered it in the January, which was this December would have been the time they should have gone had they, come right on the 12 months they said. But I know they were a little bit busy going for everybody else. So it gave me a month to think, to really gel that I had to do this. So I retired my license, and then the week, in fact, the very day I retired my license, I spoke at my first rally. So just been speaking, writing papers, treating, writing medical papers. I'm co-author on the spikopathy paper, which was one of the lead medical papers into the whole the vaccine side effects. Written a couple of medical papers since. One actually on the whole nicotine story, because that's another furphy that is out there.
Tell us about that one, because that was a courageous move, and obviously life changes dramatically once you surrender your license, and a little bit of push come to shove, right? It's like, yeah, so do I really want to keep my license and carry on with that? But thank you for doing that. Thank you for taking that courageous step. And that's opened up other doors, presumably. But also, just being a doctor for the people. I appreciate that, because we know who you are. We know what the value that you have. And I just want to say I acknowledge you for that, first of all. So tell us about this paper that you wrote, because, in the awake community, we've been fed lots of conflicting ideas, and especially around this idea of what's in the vaccine and what's going to fix it, and so forth. So nicotine, tell us about that one.
So this, the first time I heard this just, let's say it rattled my cage. So I went immediately, as I always do. I am a researcher, right? And I said, high distinction in biochem. And so I'm used to drilling down into detail on things to find out what's the real truth here. So what was being promulgated was that there's snake venom in the injections. Yeah? Everyone's heard that? There's snake venom injections? Yeah. Well, there isn't. The person, a gentleman by the name of Farsalinos, first put forward the observation that smokers seem to be doing a little better with COVID than they might expect. And so there was a bit of talk around that. And it was noted that within the spike protein, there's a small section of the spike protein that has what's called homology. Homology means similarity. Similarity with a bit of snake venom toxin. That's not the same as saying all a snake venom toxin. So, I'm running a lecture actually for the Australian Medical Network, which will show all this in slide format if anyone wants to look at the AMN lecture. That'll be on the 8th of October. But there's a tiny section which overlaps a little bit with a section of the snake venom toxin. Full-on snake venom toxin, has a multiplicity of components. It's not just one thing. It's a multiplicity of components. So that's your first thing. Oh, and the second thing, this gentleman, Farsalinos, just out of interest, happens to be a researcher in e-cigarettes. So there's a bit of background with overlap with e-cigarettes that you go, okay, well, let's just park that bit of knowledge. So there is no snake venom. There is a small section of the receptor binding protein that overlaps a bit with snake venom. What's the relevance of that? The relevance of that is that snake toxin, these particular, what's called three-finger toxins, and Bungara toxin was one of the first of these, and cobra toxin is another, has the capacity to bind very strongly to particular receptors in our body. And the receptors that they particularly bind to are what's called the alpha N7 acetylcholinergic receptors. So these are alpha N because the N stands for nicotine, because when they first discovered these receptors, the first thing that they discovered was that snake venom bound to them, but nicotine binds to them. So they were called nicotinic receptors. Now, that doesn't mean that nicotine is the right thing for the receptors. It's not. The action of nicotine on the receptors is not the same as the action of the actual neurotransmitter, acetylcholine. So acetylcholine has a very different effect on these receptors to what nicotine has. So like that's our next thing. So it was assumed and shown in silico, which means by computer modeling. Now, has anyone heard any problems with computer modeling before over the whole COVID thing?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So
Yes.
computer modeling is only as good as the parameters you put into it. So it was demonstrated in computer modeling that the spike protein would bind to the alpha N7 acetylcholinergic receptor. However, when the researchers actually came back to it, well, not those same researchers who put the theory forward, other researchers came back to it and properly tested it in what we call in vitro, properly tested it in, well, it's hard, you can't test it in live human beings, so it was tested in lab testing. They found that it doesn't. The spike protein doesn't bind to the alpha N7 cholinergic receptors, which means there is no role for saying that nicotine will displace it from the receptors, because it won't, because it doesn't bind to the receptors. So that's your first thing. So back to the actions of nicotine. Now the reason the alpha N7 acetylcholinergic receptors are important is because these are the receptors for a whole immune pathway that most doctors know nothing about. And it's called the cholinergic anti-inflammatory pathway. So this pathway, which is governed by the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, is our most powerful damper, our most powerful control pathway to control the immune system and inflammation from going in excess. So if there's a problem with the cholinergic pathway, then we will be too inflammatory. And that's exactly what does happen in COVID. That's what happens with the vaccine, that the inflammatory pathways get switched on. Oh, my computer's about to, sorry, it's been unplugged. I'll just plug that back in. There we go. We're about to lose me. So now I've got better light. That looks better. Okay. So the inflammatory pathways get switched on, and the system goes into what we call a sympathetic storm. They call it a cytokine storm, or the sympathetic nervous system storm. So we need the cholinergic anti-inflammatory pathway to work. So, okay, nicotine. Yes, nicotine is going to activate the cholinergic anti-inflammatory pathway receptors, but it's not specific for that. Nicotine works on a whole heap of other receptors in the body and in the brain. So
Can
it's
I
not.
ask a question there about nicotine? If nicotine isn't going to necessarily help in this situation, is it any good for any other health benefit?
There is no health benefit for nicotine. Well, let me pull that back. The actions of nicotine in the body are not at all what we call physiological. It does not act in the body like any of our neurotransmitters work anywhere. It does not. Its action is very different. It's very diffuse. It's very, it creates what we call a smoldering effect. All our neurotransmitters, so the whole point about the neurotransmitter pathways is that they allow for very precise and very immediate action that switches on, switches off. Nicotine gives you a smoldering action that is not precise, that goes everywhere.
A bit like smoke does when it fills the air.
It just goes everywhere. And you're just left with this smoldering effect. So if, and it's a big if nicotine is going to be used at all, it really, and the other thing about nicotine, it has a very strong U curve. What does that mean? Unless you get the sweet spot, it is going to have a lot of negative effects because it is so powerful in the body, very quickly the body says, I'm not going to let my receptors get overloaded. The same thing happens when people take SSRIs. The body says, I'm not going to let my receptors get overloaded. I'm going to downregulate them. I'm going to break them down. So what happens then, people like the effect because nicotine works on dopamine. It's a dopaminergic effect. It's the dopamine that everyone goes, wow, I feel amazing. They've just had a hit of dopamine and they want to go and have some more because dopamine makes you feel like that. There's a lot, that's dopamine's behind a lot of things.
Mm.
You all know what we feel like if you suddenly amazingly fall in love. Oh, you feel it's dopamine. It's not made to last.
No, and there's goes justifies, oh, let's make it the hero, and also why? Let's follow the money and we'll find out why.
And so that's where I'm going here. So, okay, your first guy who suggested it was a researcher in e-cigarettes. Philip Morris, the major tobacco giant, who went sideways out of standard cigarette sales following the collapse of the tobacco industry, went into a couple of places. One place they went was into food technology. The other place they went, nicotine gum, nicotine patches. 30% of their margin now, of their take now, comes from nicotine gum and nicotine patches.
Mm.
Let's use our brains a little bit here, people, and go, hang on, what's going on here? And to be honest, I think what's going on here is that we have another thing that they're trying to throw to actually steal people's health. So nicotine and the main person promoting nicotine, unfortunately, is not they are not a doctor. They are not trained in biochemistry. They are not trained in pharmacology. They are trained in musculoskeletal type medicine. They call themselves the doctor. So let's just, where is their expertise? This is not where their expertise is. So that's why I wrote a very detailed, I don't know, I forget, 10-page, 13-page, 200 references, proper peer-reviewed paper that is published in the medical literature that is solid. So nicotine, because it is so powerful in the body tries to shut down the response. It downregulates the receptors. Then you develop tolerance because that same amount of nicotine isn't giving you the effects you wanted before. So you keep going and maybe add some more, which then brings you to dependence. So if you're going to use nicotine at all, and I put a big if because there's a lot else you can do instead, if you're going to use nicotine at all, it must only be for a short time, less than a week, at a very low dose.
Mm.
It is
Wow.
not the magic pill that it is being promoted to be.
No, and so for anyone who's still questioning about that particular doctor, he's put out a lot of content to try and prop himself up and so forth, but basically comes down to snake oil salesman, really.
Yeah, look, he is not a medical doctor. In the States, they're allowed to call themselves, and I think it happens here as well, they're allowed to call themselves doctors, but in fact, their degree does not cover the components of what we have in medicine. It just doesn't. It
Mm.
doesn't cover the biochemistry. It doesn't cover the pharmacology. Their emphasis is very much on musculoskeletal medicine. Now, I wouldn't go and try and teach him how to do adjustments, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Stick to his lane. Like stay where you're trained and what
Stay
you
in
know.
your lane, mate.
Yeah.
I would love to have the opportunity to do a head-to-head debate with him. I would.
Yes. Well, yes, bring it on. You can do it right here in the show. We'll put it out there.
It is unfortunate, and I think it is unfortunately actually doing a lot of harm. Uh,
Yeah.
that's what concerned me, and that's why I had to take the bull by the horns and go and write. And it's no mean feat to write a medical paper, let me tell you. You know,
Mm.
hundreds of hours go into it. It was finished more than a year before it was published, and then a whole lot of time goes into getting it passed around medical journals to try and find one that is prepared to take it. So it took more than a year to land it in a journal. It's not like just sitting on a video and blurting something out. It's not like that.
Mm. Now, this is a question that's on a lot of people's minds. Um, they become very distrusting of doctors in general, and some wanted us to stay away from them entirely. When do you think it's okay to go see your medical professional at your local GP? And what alternatives do you have? And then how do you find a good one?
Lots of questions in that.
Lots.
Look, if you've been run over by a truck, you need the medical system, right? You need a hospital and you need the medical system, no questions asked. So really, the first thing that'll determine it is the severity of the condition and the acuteness of the condition. If it's sudden and severe, then really you need the hospital medical system, because you're going to need to have some kind of artificial props around you to kind of hold you together to give the body time to do things.
Mm.
Chronic and severe, not necessarily. I mean, chronic and severe, it's not a bad idea to go to the medical profession to get some kind of diagnosis, to get your basic tests and know, well, what's the lungs function, what the bloods look like, all this kind of stuff. But really, then you need to find someone who understands functional medicine. How does the body function as distinct to, you know, the structural and pharmacological approach that medicine has, to be able to actually help you get well?
So that's a good point right there. Going through the system's great for diagnosis. It's great for blood work. It's great for observation, because at that point, they're not going to tell you any furfies. They're just going to say, this is what it is. That's what. At the point that they say you should do X, that's the time you go, thank you for your opinion, and toddle off.
That pretty well sums it up. You know, you want to go to them to get as much information as you can and get an opinion, but do not let yourself get sucked too quickly into the medical system, because basically that's what it's designed to do, is to suck you in, spin you round and round and round and round until it can't do anything more, and then it spits you out the bottom, generally in a far worse state than you entered in the top, right? So
And sometimes they do that even with all the testing, telling you need this test and that test and go back again. And sometimes that's where you have to be very discerning, don't you? Because some tests, yes, it's good to keep going, but other ones you're like, well, like that's you just over the top now.
yeah, that's right. So you do have to exercise, let's say, a little bit of judgment. But again, the medical system is really good at generating fear and really good at pointing the bone. You know, the bone that says, if you don't do this now, you're about to die.
Mm.
Bone that says you've got to go do this test because you might have this, and if you don't, right? So be aware of bone pointing. Be aware of the tendency to generate fear, because neither of those are good. Neither of those actually bring what you really want is healing. You want someone who knows how to operate, you know, in a spirit of life and how to bring healing, which is a totally different thing. So, I mean, in acute minor stuff, once you've found a good practitioner who knows things, then you can be trained, and that's what I do with all my clients. I can't say patients now. I'm not allowed to say patients now. All my clients now, is I arm them and teach them with how to manage acute stuff, so that all my patient clients end up with an armamentarium of stuff. And so they know this is what we do before we contact Robyn. So you need to find someone who will teach you in that, because you don't want to be, and this is the other thing medicine does, it just makes you dependent on going back to them every, more and more and more. You're not ever schooled in what to do yourself, except take paracetamol. Now I am going to stop here on the paracetamol for a minute, because I've been harping about paracetamol for 20, 30 years. Paracetamol prolongs the duration of illness. It's the commonest single cause of liver failure. It has been implicated in autism. It results in a more adverse outcome from COVID, and so on, and so on, and so on. It depletes us of a really important nutrient, NAC. Anyone heard of NAC?
Yeah.
Of course. Prior to COVID, virtually no one except the functional medicine doctors had heard of NAC. But it's a very, very important molecule, and that gets used up by paracetamol. So if you've got paracetamol in your cupboard, chuck it out, please. Replace it with good old-fashioned aspirin, preferably.
Oh, aspirin. Oh,
Good old-fashioned aspirin. Aspirin is only one step away. It's what we call a semi-synthetic. It's only one step away from the original natural product. Your original natural product was stuff called white willow bark.
oh, that's okay.
Aspirin. But
Now, two things on that. NAC, can you overdose on NAC? Do you just take it when you need it, or should you take it as a regular
I
thing?
have not seen anything anywhere about being able to overdose on NAC. But having said that, you can overdose on anything. If you drink 8 liters of water, you'll get water intoxication, you'll dilute your blood, and you'll get convulsions. So let's be sensible. You wouldn't want to be eating NAC as your only food all day, every day. Yes, you would get sick. So, but
Because I've only reserved it for when I am sick. So is it something that if you do have issues with your liver, maybe increase your NAC daily?
yeah, look, it's certainly one of those things that could be taken daily. There's a lot of reasons why. My preferred form, especially if we are really, yes, that applies with Panadol. Panadol should, the thing with Panadol, if anyone hasn't noticed, is that doctors are routinely instructing parents, anytime your child has a fever, anytime your child is given a vaccination, you give paracetamol. What's happening here? What's happening is that the kids are being depleted of their N-acetylcysteine, which is needed to make a substance called glutathione, which is our major intracellular antioxidant. So that the time that they need antioxidant protection, glutathione is also needed for the immune system. At the time that their immune system needs to work, at the time that they need antioxidant protection, they are being given a substance that actually depletes both of those. So they have increased effects from the infection and the fever, and increased side effects from the vaccines. But that's a whole separate story.
Can you just go back and answer for me? What is the difference between, or an example of, chronic and severe? I think you said those two.
Well, chronic, there's chronic and acute.
Acute.
Acute means sudden onset. Chronic is long-standing. Then there's severe and there's mild. So acute and chronic are the two different categories. So,
And what would be an example of each of those?
chronic would be osteoarthritis.
Mm-hmm.
You can have really bad osteoarthritis where they say they're going to go and, you need to have new joints. Well, there still might be a way around that without going for the new joints. And acute, as I said, the example I gave, will run over by a truck.
Right.
Another acute thing would be, well, I actually hesitate to say acute infections, because to be honest, virtually any acute infection could be treated without the hospital system if you had access to intravenous vitamin C. I've saved my own life twice with intravenous vitamin C. I should have died in intensive care, and I should have died as a result of chemical explosion. On both occasions, IV vitamin C saved me. So
Is there a way that you can get intravenous vitamin C as keep at home?
yeah, but you have to have someone who knows how to do intravenous access. So you need IV fluid bags to put it into, you need giving sets, you need people who know how to give IV access. So that would mean nurse training. There are mobile IV clinics being set up in I'm not sure about New South Wales, but certainly Victoria by WOW, which is headed up by Professor Ian Brighto. So yeah, there are some places. It is worth asking around, finding where near you there is access to intravenous vitamin C, because it's literally life-saving in severe infections. But if you are talking a life-threatening severe infection, the kind of doses that you're needing is 30 to 60 gram daily. Right, so yeah, so intravenous vitamin C. So
Thank you.
acute severe infections, most people don't have the tools they need to treat at home, in which case they need to head into the hospital system, but well-trained functional medicine practitioners and the ones who have everything can treat those outside of the system. Yeah.
Yeah, very good.
Back to NAC.
Back to NAC.
My preferred form, if we're dealing really with questions around the spike protein, because so standard NAC does a lot of other things in the body, protects the liver. It's your precursor for the molecule glutathione, which is both used in detox and the immune system and antioxidant. NAC also supports sulfation pathways through the body. Sulfur is a key nutrient in the body, and sulfated molecules are key in our body. But it only has about a 15% ability to degrade spike protein if the spike is part of people's issue. In the beginning of the COVID pandemic, some Italian researchers who had access to quantum mechanic technology considered which would be the best molecule to apply, and they chose NAC, and I think correctly. I think they really did make the right choice. And they applied the quantum mechanics technology to that, which means it activated the bonds and raised the electron valence shells basically made the molecule have more energy, which means it achieves more. So that this stuff's called augmented NAC. I'll put it in the chat. This stuff's called augmented NAC.
Mm.
And the augmented NAC.
Can you get that from a health professional?
Some have it. I'm
Yeah.
one of the Australian suppliers. I'm one of the few. I became a supplier right in the beginning of everything because I looked at the technology and thought, no, this is the molecule. This is it. So that's my website, Revitalife, and we've got the augmented NAC on that website. It's also, well, it's available internationally, but for Australian guys, it's better to buy locally. It's made in Switzerland. Comes from Switzerland. So what was I saying? Yeah, so the augmented NAC recirculates your vitamin C 7-fold and your glutathione 43-fold. So it helps both of those molecules, but it also breaks the spike protein down some 99.8% of the time. So what my suggestion is in this modern scenario is that everybody take at least one a day of the augmented NAC, because any time you walk outside your door, anytime you go into the shops, anytime you go anywhere, you are spending time with people who have been multiply vaxxed. These people are excreting exosomes full of spike protein and damaged DNA and everything else that they've got. So the augmented NAC will help protect you from that. People who are actively struggling with vax side effects should be taking 2 a day or even more than that. But it works it is, in my books anyway, the thing that works as a standalone supplement. There are lots of other things you can do for spike and for vaccine side effects, and pretty well everyone would know them, zinc, quercetin, nigella, bromelain, the list goes on, nattokinase. There are lots of different things. Most of all of those need to be used in conjunction, because no one thing is powerful enough. Whereas the augmented NAC can stand alone if people will only take one thing, which many people will. Many people will only take one thing.
Yes, it's so good to hear that as a answer. What is on the rise now then? What health issues are those who are unjabbed, what are you seeing?
So, I mean, in those who are unjabbed, we've got the same background issues as were there before COVID, which is that we've got So most people are still under the delusion, and prior to COVID, I was saying this, we're still under the delusion that we are living longer than ever before in the West, that we are living longer and healthier than ever before in the West. The people group that applies to are those who were born before Second World War.
Hmm.
They are the one who are proving to be the longest livers in the West, born before the Second World War. However, once we start looking at the health parameters for people born after the Second World War, you see that the scenario is changing, because diseases that used to be seen in the very elderly, great aunts and granddads, is coming down into the Middle Ages.
Hmm.
So that we've got obesity increasing, we've got diabetes increasing, coming into younger and younger ages. We've got autoimmune diseases like autoimmune thyroid, really, really common, coming down into younger and younger ages. Cancer's increasing such that we've got 1 in 3 who are going to be getting cancer prior to COVID. This is prior to COVID.
Hmm.
So, these are the background issues that were there already.
Do you put a lot of that down to dietary issues, gut health, and processed foods and things?
So I talk on, yeah, and dementia has been just progressively climbing.
Mm.
So not just dementia, all the neurodegenerative diseases. So the brain is getting affected as well. So Parkinson's is going up, it just goes on and on, all of these diseases. In the children, autism is actually a type of neurodegenerative disease. We've got a neurodegenerative and neuroinflammatory neurodegenerative process, but happening in the very young. What I like to do, as an explanation for all of that, what I like to actually do is walk through and show people, how much has changed, where have we changed? So we started in the garden, let's say paradise. We started in this, let's say, theoretical, idealistic. What my personal view is that this was real, but the idea is a place of perfection where everything was provided, where the foods were organic and perfect, where the climate was perfect. We lived in perfect connection with our creator and with the creation. So everything was perfect. We left that. Then we moved, you go to the hunter-gatherer. And so this is where we were tribal, and food was, of course, freshly caught, freshly picked. It obviously was organic. There were no grains at that time. There obviously was no processed food. There was no sugar, so it was mostly wild berries, nuts, some root vegetables that get dug up, animals that had just been caught. Rarely honey, because they used to have to go out with their flaming torches and find a beehive and smoke all the bees out at great expensive personal stings, take the hive home, and they'd back to the tribe, and they'd eat that, and that'd be their honey hit for months, maybe, till they found another hive. So it was all very much in connection with nature. Everything was in connection with creation. Yes, it was tough stuff. Yes, there were periods of famine. Yes, if they had an injury, they would frequently die from them. Fast forward, and I'm going to skip all the stages that I go when I'm actually giving this lecture. We come up to now, and we've gone through all these stages. This is where we had the tribal, then we moved into the village, then we moved to the agricultural, then we go to the industrial, then we go to the chemical, then we go to the electronic, then we come into the technological and information era, which is kind of where we are now. With each one of those steps, we've progressively lost more and more connection to that garden, to that creation that we came out of. So that where we are now, we have many people who will live 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and never see real light, never breathe real air, will have their feet shod in rubber-soled shoes so that they never connect to the earth, will be wearing artificial clothing, will be eating artificial, chemical processed, multiple additives, sugar-laden food. They will be drinking fluids that are not water, right? They will not be communicating with each other eye to eye, face to face, and touch. It'll all be done. It's being done through screens. Conversation is no longer the ability to actually look at someone in the eye and converse in sentences. It's memes, it's emojis, it's right. So we have lost. So it's a result of everything in that change that we are where we are now.
It's
Or
all pervasive, isn't it? And health has to be a holistic approach.
it has to be holistic. And that's why, again, you'll find this on my website, but that's why I've developed the thing called the Healthy 100, which is the concept of a wheel. And if the wheel is well balanced, it will just keep rolling. So it's a wheel with 7 spokes to the wheel and a central axle. So your 7 spokes that we have to get balanced. If these spokes are balanced, then we'll do well, right? If you're missing a spoke altogether, or if you're out of balance, the wheel will not roll well.
Mm.
So air, light, water, rest, recreation, movement, foods, supplements are number 7. Many people think that they can supplement the way out of everything else being wrong. You can't. That's number 7. And supplements only need to be there because, unfortunately, the bottom line is that because our planet is altered so much, our soils are altered so much, people are not growing their own food. The foods you get will not and do not contain everything they used to contain historically. Then the core hub that holds all this together is love, joy, peace. Now, love, joy, peace happens to be the top 3 fruits of Holy Spirit, which is another side to the story. But sticking in with what I was saying earlier about the nervous system, coming back to the cholinergic anti-inflammatory system, these are the emotions of the parasympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system is our mature nervous system, which is the state we need to be in most of the time so that we are in a state of rest, we can digest, and we can repair.
Mm.
The opposite of that is the sympathetic nervous system, the emotions of which are fear, anger, sadness. This is the flight, fright, fight, alarm system. All of what happened in COVID was designed to keep people in the alarm system, in the sympathetic nervous system alarm state. We have to move across to the parasympathetic nervous system and live in that state if we want to be healthy. We want to be well, in a wholeness. The old word, hale, whole, hearty, the old English words. It's this idea of wholeness. It's not just about our modern concept of health is way too narrow. It's just
Mm.
the whole thing. So that's
I
it.
love how you described it because it's not just one state of you can't just have health without the happiness and the joy and the peace. So, yeah, those two things go hand in hand. And often, when someone does have the attributes, right, then that boosts the immune system
Absolutely.
and has that flow on effect.
Absolutely. So it's a whole separate teaching I do about the body, soul, spirit, and how, you can't separate these states and they flow from one to the other. But well, it's not whole separate. It kind of fits in with this. But I will just touch on one little thing. A lot of people confuse or conflate happiness and joy. They're different.
Mm-hmm.
Happiness is a state that comes when something good has happened and there's a temporary little boost in, right? So happiness is a dependent emotional state, whereas joy is an internal state that can be held regardless of your circumstances. It's different. So love, joy, peace as compared to happiness. A lot of people go out and pursue happiness, which means they've got to forever be finding the next beautiful thing to do or the next beautiful place to go, or, I've got to find things that make me happy. Make me happy. I've got to be with the person who makes me happy.
Yes.
It's external things. Whereas joy, true joy, is an internal state.
Yeah, beautiful distinction.
It's an internal state, not dependent
Mm.
on the circumstances. In fact, it's often despite the circumstances.
100%. So with so thank you for sharing that the where we've come from and where we are at now. Um, what are some things that we can do to bolster our health now, knowing that the basically everything that we're eating, unless you're growing it yourself, and it's very hard to you grow everything and do everything yourself, we're basically not eating food. So, and you said supplements are just that little bit. so going back to that wheel, what is some good practices that we can bring in?
So again, everyone go look at the wheel, and you'll get this, because there's lectures and things all around that. So air, we've got to make sure that we are breathing real air. If you're in the city, look at the questions of air filtration, HEPA type filters, so you get the air pollution out. So much evidence about the effects of air pollution on health. So looking, and obviously if you're smoking, forget the nicotine, it's everything else in there as well. So just stop. How you breathe is vitally important. Most of us are breathing up in the chest, in the upper chest. This is using what we call the accessory muscles of respiration. These are the muscles that are only designed to be used if you're running from a tiger. They're accessory muscles of inspiration. We're supposed to use the diaphragm, which is a giant muscle that lives underneath the lungs, and the diaphragm's innervated by the vagal nerve, which comes back to talking about parasympathetic nervous system. So you need to learn how to breathe the right way. Most singers know how to do it.
Mm.
So air,
Diaphragm.
light. The powers that be have done a great job of making people scared of sunlight. Why? Because they want to sell sunscreen. Why do they want to sell sunscreen? Because it's more chemicals that goes into the system. Make no doubt, make no bones about it. The powers that be behind things know what does what. They're not stupid. They know what does what.
Mm.
We need sunlight. Now, that doesn't mean you go out in the middle of the day and you sunbake for an hour until you're a red lobster and you blister. That's not what I'm talking about. We need to have exposure to the sun first thing in the morning to reset our biological clocks. We need time in the sun at times of day, again, because our light receptors aren't only in the eyes. A lot of people think the only place that we perceive light is in our eyes. We have got chromophores, we have got molecules throughout our body that are designed to respond to light. Light is photons, particles of energy. These particles of energy actually come into our body and can get converted. So we need light. So, and issues with your house lighting, most people are only being exposed to the very narrow spectrum of blue light. And this was this change again that they made when they got rid of incandescent globes and replaced them all with fluoro and so on. Again, interesting things that were done with that, because our beautiful old-fashioned globes would give out yellow light. So Nicola's got a nice yellow light going on in the background there. So we need that yellow light. And in the evenings, we should not have any white blue lights on. I've got one above me at the moment that's on simply because I'm trying to shine more light so you guys can see me. But normally in the evenings, I only ever have on the yellow to warm lights, because our brain needs to know that the sun has gone down. The longer wavelength of the warmer lights helps the, sorry, I just got sidetracked reading that. Helps the production of melatonin. So light. So we need to get in the natural sunlight. We need to look at what's happening with our home lighting. We need to look at what's happening with computer screens. Personally, I have all my screens permanently set to warm yellow. I just don't do the blue lights ever. But you need to change so that in the evenings you've got the warm lights. So light, air, light, water. Our bodies, depending on which reference you look at, are something like 2/3 water. Interesting microcosm of the planet, which is 2/3 water. So we're 2/3 water. We are first formed in a bag of water in the amniotic fluid. It's a bag of water. So water is a universal solvent. It's a universal carrier. We need to be drinking real water, not teas and coffees and Coca-Cola and soft drinks. Water. And it should be water that is as close to how water used to be. So how did water used to be? Well, yes, fresh mountain springs. So water that is moving, that is energized, that is activated. And this is where we run into the whole question, when you start talking about exclusion zone water that's got strong negative charges and so on. So that's a whole separate lecture in itself. But alive water that is mineralized, that is chemical free, that is toxin free. That way the water can flush through our system, can carry the nutrients through our system, and can flush out the toxins. So we have to be having water.
Can I, is filtered water taking out too many minerals, do you think? Some filters?
It depends on it's very, very individualized. It depends on the filter. If you're doing distilled water, reverse osmosis water, then you've stripped the water completely. Reverse osmosis has got nothing in it. So that has to be passed then over mineral rocks. Otherwise, what will happen when it goes into your body is it'll actually strip your body. So if you've got a reverse osmosis machine, great, you've got rid of all the chemicals and the toxins, but you've now got to put minerals back in it. So yeah, it very much depends on the individual filter. But yeah, just look at the quality of those. There are many very good ones. I've probably come to the point of thinking that the Kangen might be one of the best. Finally bit the bullet and bought one myself, and have found it very interesting to look at the studies. So
Beautiful. Me too.
so actually I've probably got a link for that. But anyway, so water. Movement. Every living thing moves. And again, what's happening in our modern society, we are the most sedentary at any time in the history of man. Whenever you have any fluid, any body of fluid that is stagnant, which is what happens when you're sedentary, it basically gets infected. It grows mold and fungus and stuff. And you know, this is sort of what's happening with us. We have to move. So I prefer to say movement than just exercise, because really moving should be a part of life. It should be that whenever you go somewhere and you've got a choice between going up the escalators or going up the flight of stairs, you take the stairs. You've got a choice between stairs and a lift, you take the stairs. You know, you've got a choice between parking a little bit further away and walking to get somewhere, or getting dropped right at the door, you walk. You know, something drops on the floor, you can either, you know, just kind of uncomfortably stretch forward, or you do a squat and pick it up. Movement needs to be a part of everyday life. Yes, you have more concentrated times of movement where you might go out and exercise, whereas historically, of course, we worked the land. You know, washing clothes used to be exercise. Old-fashioned boilers and wringers, and you know, there was physical labor. Remember when all these things got introduced, they were called labor-saving devices. Labor-saving devices. Why? Because we didn't have to work anymore and they made us lazy. And that's what's happening with all these labor-saving devices, all these convenience devices. We've become lazy, physically, mentally. How many people remember phone numbers now?
Yeah, we don't.
Some people do. But yeah, well, it's a mental exercise that really we need to be doing. Because we've become physically lazy and mentally lazy. So, and movement is needed for the brain. It's needed for every part of the body. It's needed for the brain. Our bodies are highly, highly efficient. If there's any part of our body that we aren't using, it kind of says, okay, I can find better use for all of this stuff somewhere else, and it literally will break it down. Whether we're talking muscle, whether we're talking bone, whether we're talking ligaments, whether we're talking brain. The body basically says, that's not being used. Okay, we'll break it down. We'll find another use for it.
Pack that in. You don't need that, obviously.
Yeah, you've decided you don't need that. Well, okay.
Put the energy somewhere else, or just save it for another day.
Yep, exactly. So we have to move. The next thing is rest recreation. I put them together because, you know, recreation, look at that word, recreate. Recreation, recreate. So we need one day a week where we can recreate ourselves, where we can find that balance again. So rest, so sleep, rest, it's a U curve, and pretty much everything is the U curve in nature when you look at it. It's not just a case of a little bit is good and more is better. Virtually everything, we've got a U-curve, and it's about finding where's that sweet spot. So with sleep, your sweet spot is between 7 and 8 hours. If you're getting less than 6 hours, there are many people who kid themselves, I only need 6 hours. You might think you only need 6 hours. If you're not yet sick, you will be. End of story. After 9 hours, you already are sick. Your body isn't able to recuperate and get everything what it needs. If you're needing more than 9 hours, there is already a problem. So 7 to 8 hours. So that's your rest, recreation. Then we come to foods. So with foods, I guess the simplest thing that I say for a lot of people is like, well, we've got most people have got 5 fingers. And so I talk about the 5 Ps, just being really simple. So food needs to be primitive. What do I mean by that? Recognizable, real, often raw, but recognizable. You can actually see what this food is, right? So recognizable. The next P is for processed, and I say no processed foods, no white foods. There are no foods in nature that are pure white. And you might say cauliflower, no, it's not, it's cream. Turnips, no, they're cream. Potatoes, they're cream. Your real heritage potatoes are yellow or purple. All right, so there is rice. By the way, natural rice is not white. Natural rice is brown or red or black. White rice is a polished rice. So there is no food that is in nature whole that is pure white. So as soon as it's white, you know it's processed, and so it's lost vitamins, minerals. It's lost important things that it needs.
Do you think we should be drinking milk?
Milk's cream. It's a cream color. It's not pure white. But again, what we call milk now is not what milk used to be historically. Historically, the original herders. So again, the herders. I missed the herders when I ran through that run earlier. Sorry. So your hunter-gatherer herders in the agricultural phase. Your herders were predominantly goats and sheep. Modern cattle that we use now for dairy, so your Friesians predominantly, are a different molecular structure in the milk to what we used to be. We used to predominantly be the Guernseys, smaller cattle, smaller udders, different molecular structure to the milk. And so this is the A2 milk. So the Jerseys, different molecular structure. We switched the herds in the 1950s because the milk production wasn't big enough. So we come to the Friesians in particular, which are bigger udders, larger milk production, but the molecular structure is different, and they're prone to chronic mastitis because they're forever producing milk. So you get antibiotics and residue bacteria. That's another story. So what we call, and then that milk is processed. What we call milk now is not what milk historically used to be. If you can get fresh raw goat's milk, fantastic. Some people can still access raw unpasteurized Jersey milk. Great. I know one time years ago, actually, some 20 years ago, I went down to lecture in Melbourne and on all of this, and then came back down a little while later, and a couple came up to me and said, "We've bought a backyard cow." And it was a Jersey cow. And we've called it Robyn. About that. How fantastic to have a cow named after you. It's like, yeah, the cow Robyn. Anyway, so but that's the point. We don't do things like historically it used to be. So if people have their own backyard Jersey cow or be milking their goats or, fine. But that's not what it is now. And then those milks, so this was again coming into the kind of this was the herder stage. Those milks would be naturally fermented in the animal stomach. So they'd be carried around in the sheep stomach, which would naturally curdle it, not fermented, curdle it. So yeah, it's what we've got now isn't milk. It truly is not milk. It's white poison. It shouldn't be drunk. So where did I get to? Processed. Preservatives. So preservatives, additives, colorings, label numbers. When you're reading a label, if anything has got a number, just don't have it. If it's got names that you don't recognize as whole real foods, just don't have it. So that's your next one is preservatives. Then packaged foods. Well, packaged foods have got to obey all the first three things. If you pick up a packet or a label and it's got more than 5 things in it, you can pretty well guarantee that all the things after that are going to be garbage. So if you're going to have packet food, pre-packaged food, please carefully read the label. Don't have anything with added sugar. Don't have anything with numbers. Don't have anything that has got names you don't recognize as a whole real food.
I tell my kids that if it's got maltodextrin in it, you can just forget it already.
That's a start, but we've got to, there are simpler rules. There's a lot more than just maltodextrin. But yeah, that is part of the problem. It's semi-synthetic stuff. And these things are being put in, they're sold as food, whereas they are not at all foods. Instead, they are substances that are going to take energy and nutrients from our body for our body to be able to process and excrete.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a negative effect, not a positive effect, a negative effect. They're deceptive food. It's
Yeah.
deceptive food. It's
And
really
it's usually addictive forming.
Oh yeah, it usually is. So sugar, it's known that, and they know this from rat studies. Sugar creates a lighting up in the same parts of the brain that cocaine does.
Mm.
Sugar is so powerful in our body, but even if it makes it to the brain before the brain, the sugar feeds our gut bacteria and it feeds the wrong set of bacteria, and those bacteria can only make toxin when they're fed sugar. So we need to remember that whenever we're eating, the first thing it feeds is our gut bacteria. That's the first thing it feeds. So, final P, pre-prepared foods. If you're going to go somewhere and eat something, make sure you know what it is you're eating. So 5 Ps. So yeah, that's not that hard to get. Yeah. So foods, supplements. I prefer supplements. Whenever people come into me as a client, the basis of my supplements first is always whole food supplements. And
Mm-hmm.
then you do specific individual nutrients or nutrient combinations based on what that person's profile is. Minerals, yeah, I mean, we are made out of minerals. We are made out of the dust. And there's not enough focus in many people for the minerals. Yeah. So most people
Yeah, that
go,
seems to be a thing now, is making sure that you get enough minerals.
well, we can be slow waking things up. There are those of us who've been around for a long time, but who've been doing this. But yes, so I've been prescribing minerals for 30 years, but there is a growing recognition that we're made out of the dust. The minerals are both our structure
Mm.
and enzyme pathways, our enzymes, and they make up our components. The vitamins don't make up anything structural. The minerals do.
Yeah, very good. So maybe we can go to the question in the chat, because Donna's written about hypothyroidism. I had hypothyroidism earlier in the year myself. Now I have a question about whether I've cured it or not. I have symptoms that are popping up here and there. But do you want to answer this one? I don't.
So the thing about taking bovine thyroid is you're not only taking thyroid hormone. Standard medicine treats hypothyroidism by just giving you thyroid hormone. Bovine thyroid will also contain iodine, will also contain selenium, will also contain zinc, will also contain the other things that the thyroid needs to make thyroid hormone. So it's possible that your bovine thyroid may provide enough of those nutrients for the thyroid to get its act together. But if the baseline diet is still depleted and there still are other issues, then it's likely to recur. So I would be looking at wider issues than simply taking bovine thyroid.
In my case, I felt like it was an emotional thing, more than a physical thing. But then now I'm starting to wonder if there's a physical component to it. So, do you know what brings on that hypothyroidism and
Most
um,
cases of hypothyroidism are autoimmune, as in there are measurable antibodies against the thyroid, in which case we're talking all the other issues to do with an immune imbalance. So it's a combination of the body being deficient, typically in iodine. That's the commonest thing, but it can also be zinc and selenium. So you've got a deficiency that stresses the thyroid. Then you've got an immune dysfunction that is occurring for all the reasons that we have immune dysfunction happening in our society. It's really, really common. And so that results in an autoimmune thyroiditis that inflames the thyroid, that then drops the thyroid function. That's why I'm saying there's a bit more to do than simply taking bovine thyroid.
Mm.
We are body, soul, spirit simultaneously. As Einstein said, it's all about energy. So anything that depletes the body energy can make a point of weakness, such that then you develop a disease process over that.
I have always looked after my health and never drank or smoked and thought, you know what, I'm ticking all the good boxes here and my health is going well. And the one thing that I think now it might be starting to play a part, which I didn't consider before, was the mercury fillings.
If you've got mercury fillings, absolutely. Every time we chew mercury, if you've got mercury fillings, then mercury vapor is released every time you chew. And because it's in the mouth, it'll actually pass straight up through what we call the cribriform plate and access directly to the brain, but also get through the bloodstream and alter the immune system. Mercury is a very powerful effect on the immune system. So a good test to do to just, well, actually, it's a test that is limited to the skill of the person interpreting it. But nonetheless, an oligoscan is a good test to do to get an idea of what your mineral status is like, your vitamin status and your mineral status, heavy metal status. Having said that, it needs to, and I just had this happen today where someone had an oligoscan done and viewed by a naturopath elsewhere and said, they told me it's fine. I said, let me have a look at it. And I'd say, well, no, you've got this. So it really does need correct interpretation. But mercury is a major problem.
Mm.
If you do have mercury amalgams, then certainly I would be looking to be going on a heavy metal detox protocol. And once your body load is sufficiently and your body's in a good enough state of health, you then find a biological dentist who knows the correct procedures for being able to get them removed. Yeah, done a lot with people with those over the years.
Yeah. Wow, and from the era where that's all they gave out was mercury until yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. It was just the routine thing. And again, it's another case of it was a pure industry deal. What can we do with this mercury? Ah, we'll put it in, and we'll put it in people's fillings. Tailings of the aluminium industry. Isn't this wonderful? Good, good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's frightening. So one of the things that you spoke about earlier was dementia, the rise in that, and how can we prevent mental
Well,
decline?
it's all the same things that I was talking before. It's all exactly the same thing. The brain's not chopped off at the neck.
Mm,
There are certain genetic types who are a little more prone to it. So certainly if you've got a family history of dementia, then you need to be doing more. You need to find someone who can really help you be a little more precise with it. It's heavy metal. So the main risk factors for, aside from having the genetics, unfortunate genetics, diabetes and dysglycemia will in
mhm,
itself create a dementia process, and in some cases that's been called, type 3 dementia. So that will create a dementing process. Chemical toxicity, heavy metal toxicity, mercury will
mhm.
predispose to a dementing process. Head trauma, head injury is another significant, especially sort of the recurrent head injuries is another significant category. So they're your main categories. So if you really, I mean, but doing the same baseline things, as I said before, are really important. All of those things help protect you. And of course, the added thing, as I said, I spoke earlier about, any part of the body that's not being used. If you're not using your brain, if you're not challenging your brain by making it do memory things, by making it sort problems, by making it read, by making it do things, if you're not using your brain, then it will deteriorate. And again, lots of studies where they've shown that levels of background education, levels of doing things like, they did a big study of nuns. I think they were in their 90s or hundreds even, but a big study of nuns, and found that the dementia rates were very low, particularly in those who were doing crosswords all the time.
Hmm.
So basically, you have to exercise your brain somehow. You find the things that suit you. So learning new skills, dancing, learning new languages, learning to play musical instruments. Our brains need to be exercised. They need to be learning, they need to be thinking, they need to be doing things. And if they're not, the body is going to kind of say, well, I can prune some more pathways here. You're not using, you're just sitting watching TV. Well, you don't need this pathway. You don't need that pathway. You don't need to remember anything. And so the brain prunes it all.
Yes, and watch this new generation, well, any generation, but with the in AI, watch people use their brains less and less.
And the educators have already commented on that. The neuropsychs are already commenting on that, that we are getting literal alteration of brain structure as a result of doing these things. One particular not a neuropsych, a neuroscientist has put out a little mini YouTube basically saying that your taxi drivers who rely on GPS will have lost the ability to create mind maps.
Mm.
So it's all this basic stuff. The more we depend on all these labor saving and, make it easy and it's convenient, all of these devices take away a level from us for us to be able to actually achieve things and do things.
We're coming back to being self-reliant rather than dependent. Is
We
yeah.
have we have to know how to do things.
Mm.
We have to not just know how to do things, we have to do things.
Yes. Yeah, beautiful. Well, we've come to the end of our evening together. I wish we could keep talking, but it's been excellent, and you've covered a lot of topics, and I think you've nailed it for what most people are going to want to know. But if not, if you have specific questions, if you want to come and see Robyn again, you can come to the Freedom Summit on the 24th of October, the Friday night. You can come and see Robyn speak at the Freedom Summit, and we're so excited to have you there, Robyn. And you can just turn up and meet Robyn and hear her speak on that Friday night. So, sorry, you do have to register to get a free ticket. Let's just be clear. Um, and it's in Kenthurst. Make your way, it's an hour out of Sydney. And if you want to stay the weekend, there's camping on site. So thank you for joining us tonight, Robyn, and thank you for joining us at the Freedom Summit.
Yeah, that's going to be a busy weekend. If people want other things as well, the reason I'll be in Sydney that weekend is I'm also lecturing at the ACIDS conference on autism on we figured it out, it was the Sunday. That's right. I'm lecturing at that conference on the Sunday. So there's certainly lots happening. Yeah, and autism really is just so demonstrating exactly what I said earlier. All of this thing that the diseases are coming into younger and younger ages, the toxin load is getting worse, the immune system is being disrupted, and so it's manifesting in kids because their brains are not yet formed, and so it's
Mm.
actually disrupting brain function.
It's so prolific. We all know somebody with autism. It never used to be that way.
When I first started in medicine, in fact, the official figures back in 1985 was 4 in 100,000.
Mm.
1982, sorry, 4 in 100,000. But when I went through med to see an autistic child, we had to actually go to the autism school because they just weren't in the community. The latest CDC figures, and they're not even, in fact, right up to current time, it's just the latest figures, are 1 in 31.
Oh my goodness.
1 in 31. So it's all these things that we are doing in our modern world, all of them. It's not just one thing, it's all of these things combined. And the kids, these poor bubs, are the canaries, and they
Mm.
are the ones who are showing us how bad it all is. So we are actually, don't always, well, I don't say this usually from platform, but this is a small enough group to say it. We are literally facing the loss of a generation of children. It's that bad. So much of this current generation, with everything that is being done, will not be able to live to be functional, neurotypical adults who can then parent children. They will either be infertile or dysfunctional.
Yeah. Yeah, that is frightening.
So this is where we
It,
have to face.
no, they're not going to be able to think right, to be able to parent is exactly right. They'll have to go to AI. All right, what do I do next? Yeah,
It's crazy stuff.
it's scary.
So,
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And is there any last words on anything before we head out?
well, I guess just that there's always hope. Take that simple framework, the Healthy 100 framework, and work with it. And there is always hope. The resilience in this creation, the resilience in our human bodies is absolutely remarkable. But we do have to stop poisoning ourselves and this system and start doing it the way the Lord told us to do it. The answers are in creation. Everything we need for life and health is in creation. So, yeah.
Amen to that. Yes. Thank you. And thank the Lord. We do have everything that we need, and we just need to go back to basics.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you everyone for joining us in the room tonight, and stay tuned for next week. We actually have a talk on privacy in security. So we're actually not going to be on this Zoom link next Tuesday. You'll get a new Zoom link. So if you don't already get my emails, you definitely want to get my email next week, because the link to that will be in there, because we won't be on the Zoom platform. We'll be testing out another platform that has privacy and security around it. Um, so make sure you send me your email address if I don't have it already, and then you'll be able to get on my mailing list. And then the week after that, we're going to hear all about from a dentist and a scientist, all about what's happening in dentistry. So we're going to do a real deep dive onto what we talked about, the fillings and so forth. So thanks again, Robyn, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah. Look forward to it. Thank you all.
Night, everyone.